Good morning, boys and girls. Today is Thursday and it is your last lesson of the week with me. Today you're going to be learning about Proverbs and Adages. So let's talk about your goal. This is what I want you to be able to do at the end of the lesson. And at the end of the lesson, you should be able to recognize and explain the meaning of common idioms, adages, and proverbs. So let's talk a little bit about what a proverb and adages are. Now, proverbs and adages, they are short sayings or expressions. They've been used for a really long time in lots of different cultures. And they typically express general truths. Now, of course, you always have your weekly hint for your lesson, and the hint to determine the meaning of a proverb or an adage is to look for context clues. And those context clues are the words that are surrounding the proverb or the adage, and they help you determine the meaning. So let's get into some common proverbs and adages that were in the short story that we read called The Struggle to Survive. Now, I'm going to show you your chart. On the left-hand side, the first column, you're going to have your proverb and your adage. And the middle is where we're going to find the context clues from the text that will help us determine the meaning, which we will put in this column over here. So let's take a look at the proverb, ignorance is bliss. So in order to do that, we need to head back to the text. All right, so here is the short paragraph that has the proverb, ignorance is bliss. Like I mentioned, all of these proverbs and adages are going to come from the struggle to survive that we read. So let's take a look at this paragraph, and as always, let's reread so we can understand what's happening in the text. The struggle to survive. There is a proverb that says, ignorance is bliss. Now remember, as we go through, we're looking for context clues that can help us determine the meaning of that proverb. In the case of the 104 men and boys who came ashore, this was true. So the text is telling us that proverb is true. Ignorance is bliss. So we need to pay attention to the words that are following so we can pull out those context clues. They were faced with tremendous challenges. So there's a context clue right there. Tremendous challenges is going to help us build to know what ignorance is bliss means. The water from the James River was not safe to drink. So there's also a challenge. That would be a tremendous challenge. And food was scarce. And you're right, that is also another challenge. 2 weeks after the settlers arrived, 200 Indians attacked them. So let's think about those context clues that I mentioned, because we need to figure out what ignorance is bliss means. Tremendous challenges. We know that the water was not safe to drink, food was scarce, and 2 weeks after they arrived, they were attacked. So if ignorance is bliss, what does that proverb mean? Now let's think about it. If the settlers knew they were going to face all of these challenges, do you think that they would have went? You're right. They probably would not have settled in that area if they knew they were going to face challenges like not having safe water, not having enough food, and getting attacked. So in this section, ignorance is bliss has to mean that sometimes it's better not to know certain things. Because if they knew what they were going to be facing, they definitely would not be going. Let's head back over to our chart. Let's put in our context clues, and then let's write the meaning that you and I decided what ignorance is bliss means. All right, what were those context clues again? One more time, hopefully you remembered. We did decide that tremendous challenges is one of them. And what were those tremendous challenges? That's right, they had unsafe water, scarce food, and what was the last one? And they were attacked. Now, we decided that those were context clues to help us determine what ignorance is bliss means. Now, if they knew all of those challenges were headed their way, they definitely would not have known. They definitely would not have gone there. So the meaning of ignorance is bliss probably has to do with sometimes it's better not knowing things. Because if they knew all those things were coming their way, they probably wouldn't have settled there. All right, let's take a look at our next proverb. And our next proverb has to do with he that will not work shall not eat. Let's head over back to the text so we can find the context clues that will help us determine what that means. All right, let's go ahead and reread the text. Remember, we are looking for context clues that are going to help us determine the meaning of he that will not work shall not eat. And you probably already have a really good idea of what that means because maybe you've heard it before. But let's look for some context clues that are going to help us determine the meaning for sure. John Smith, an experienced military man, became head of the colony in 1608. Okay, so we know John Smith, he's in charge of the colony. He had been in charge of finding local tribes willing to swap food for English copper and beads. So he's actually in charge. That means he's the one doing the work, trying to find the tribes that are willing to swap food. Smith was tough with both the Indians and Englishmen. He that will not work shall not eat, he told the colonists. Smith knew that an attitude of every man for himself would endanger the colony. So we have our proverb here, he that will not work shall not eat. We know that he was in charge of finding the food. So what does that proverb mean? Let's head back to our graphic organizer so we can input the context clues that talk about John Smith being in charge of finding food. So we know that from the text, it does state that John Smith, he was in charge. So the word charge definitely has something to do with that proverb. Now, what were the other context clues that that are going to help us determine the meaning of that proverb? Take a minute to think about it. If you need to rewind the video or pause the video to look for those context clues, do that now. And then when you're ready, come back. So we know that John Smith was in charge of finding food, and that directly correlates with this proverb right here because we know that we're talking about food and eating. And we know that the Indians and John Smith's friends and him were swapping beads and copper. So what could that proverb mean? What do you think it means? You're right. It means someone who is not willing to do the work, plain and simple, just isn't going to eat. So that proverb does mean if you're not willing to work, you don't eat. Pretty simple, and it's pretty self-explanatory. So let's put the meaning in there. If you don't work, you don't eat. Think about it. If John Smith wouldn't have went out to find different tribes to trade with, then him and the Englishmen would definitely not have eaten. So let's take a look at one more proverb before you go practice on your own. And that last proverb is every man for himself. Let's take a look at the text. I'm sure you already know the meaning. I don't even think we need context clues, but let's just take a look at the text to be sure. So if you remember, that last proverb is in here, and it said, or sorry, in this last sentence, and it says, Smith knew that an attitude of every man for himself would endanger the colony. So what would that proverb mean? Now, unfortunately, I don't really see any context clues that would help me solve that, but that's because I already know what it means. And I'm sure you've already heard what it means because remember, proverbs and adages, they are short sayings or phrases that have been around for a really long time. And sometimes they just don't need an explanation because we already know them. And sometimes the meaning is just in the proverb or the adage itself. So let's head back to our chart and let's fill it in. I'm not going to put any context clues in here because I didn't really see anything that helped me figure it out. And that's okay. You will find proverbs or adages where the context clues don't help you. Now, every man for himself. What does that mean? And you're right. This proverb actually does mean that everybody is taking care of themselves. So if I were to say every man for himself, that means I am going to worry about myself. I'm going to take care of myself. You are going to take care of yourself. So every man for himself does mean each person is on their own and responsible. For their self. Okay, I don't know if I like that one because I don't think every man should be for themselves. I think we all have to help each other too. Now, let's take a look at what you are going to be working on to practice your proverbs and your adages. You're going to head over to Google Classroom and you're going to find the assignment labeled Unit 5, Week 5, Proverbs and Adages. Let's take a look at what that looks like right now. All right, here is what I have you working on for this assignment. Where you see type here, you are going to put your name, just highlight it in the box, and you're going to click out. Then you can read a little bit more about proverbs and adages. Head to your directions, which says read each group of sentences below. Underline the context clues that help you understand the meaning of the proverb or adage in bold. Then circle the letter of the best definition of the proverb or adage in bold. So you'll go through number 1 and you will underline the context clues, and let's show you exactly how to underline. So to underline, you are going to click this line right here. Excuse me. And if these are the context clues right here, you'll just click and drag the line to wherever you think the context clues are, just like that. Now, if you decide that that's not the context clue, you can click it with your trackpad and then hit delete and it'll go away. Now, to circle your answer, you will want to come right up here to Shapes. You'll click this circle here, and then you'll click anywhere on the document, and a circle will pop up. To make it smaller, you just click in the corners, and it makes it smaller for you. Now, you'll notice that it is showing a gray inside. So to change it, you're going to click this paint bucket right here, and you're going to click transparent, and that will have that color disappear. And if I want to pick A, I'm just going to put it here, maybe make it a little smaller, and then your teacher and I would know that's your answer. And you can move this as many times as you want around to put it in your answer of which ones you're choosing. So head over to Google Classroom now and complete your assignment that says Unit 5, Week 5, Proverbs and Adages. All right, guys, have a good week, and I will talk to you next Monday.